Hello Copic craft fans, welcome to Copic in the craft room. My name is Michelle Houghton. We have a really fun little image today, and if I have time at the end I'll turn her into a card. If not, I will add a photograph at our Facebook page of the card that I turn this image into. There's a lot going on here, so I just don't know, even with speeding this up, how long this will end up. So I'm not promising a card. This is one of Tiddly Inks' newer images, one of her May images, the name of the little girl. Or no, it's Molly. Sorry, it's Molly. Molly images, and I know we're hitting the end of summer, but I'm doing one last little summer image to kind of kick off as we head into school, the school year, at least where I am at. So I'm going to start with her skin and hair and work my way down with some fun color combinations. No necessarily super fancy tips or tricks here today. I'm just coloring this little image up and keeping her sweet and simple. We are going to start with E11, and this is going to be super fast. When I finished, I had 35 minutes of filming for the coloring, so I've sped it up so we can get the whole figure in. So E11 is the base. E13 is going to come in and be my shadow. I've put that light source up in the right corner. I'm giving some dimension to her face, coming down the right side, tiny bit on the left, and then coming down the right side of those legs, underside of the arms, and then even hitting the bottom of her toes. And I will come back and work that again with E11, smoothing that out just a little bit because it took me a little while to get through all of those segments. And then I am adding a little bit of R21 to her cheeks. I end up fighting this color combination a little bit, so you're going to see a lot of back and forth. I'm adding some cast shadows under the hairline with my E13, on the legs, on the toes, just to darken those areas up a little bit. Y31 is going to base that big head of hair. It is gorgeous, but it does take some time because you got a lot going on. So Christy Kroll, who does Tiddly Inks, has given us a lot of information here, lots of separate waves, so we can use those for our shading and shadowing. I debated a lot about the lines that are in that hole of the tube, about whether they were hair that I'm seeing or what, and I decided finally they were probably little bits of hair at the bottom. YR24 is going to be my next color. I'm already starting to flick this in, so I'm coming from the top and the bottom of each segment and flicking that in. The hair that's going to be down around her face and especially by her neck is going to get particularly dark. So those areas pretty much just get colored in entirely with that YR24. But again, I'm trying to go into each segment. This is going to keep that hair looking really pretty. I could do this more as a full head and ignore those segments, but if I can treat those as individual segments, I'm going to get a lot nicer results, more detailed results. E15 is next. Again, as I get into those higher numbers, just like we've seen on other images, I'm going to use less and less as I get into a darker value. The area that's around her neck and her chin still get treated pretty darkly. You'll see every once in a while I'll get a flick that goes kind of the wrong direction. At this stage I can still do a lot of correcting, so I'm not super worried about that, but I'm just working through getting all of those little pieces taken care of. You can see now where I've got some tiny ones that I don't hit the bottom in and I blob. So I've pulled off the other end of that marker, I scribbled off some excess, and I'm continuing to work with my E15. I'll come back and deal with the blob later. E25 is next, and I am working, this is getting much darker, so smaller amounts. You can see now I'm working into those back areas or back little waves of her hair, right around that neck area in particular, and this one looks like it's going to blob, so I have pulled off the other end, and I'm working with both caps off the marker. This is going to help circulate the air through the marker and keep that ink up in the barrel where I want it. But look how now I'm pushing back some of those areas, so it looks like there's real depth in all those waves. E27 is the last color I'm going to hit her hair with. There's so much going on. To me, it was worth hitting this with a lot of colors. I do this in very, very tiny areas to really push some areas back and add dimension. N5 is next, and unfortunately this is where I have worked right off the screen and my head gets in the way. I am filling in the lenses on her sunglasses and leaving little white highlights. I'm going to pull it down here in a minute and you will be able to see that. I apologize that I slipped off the screen. E13 is back because I realized that her arm did not get colored on that far side. So I just fill that in with E13. Y32 is going to base the little rubber duck. Y35 for some mid-tone. Y38 for the beak. And I go back with a colorless blender real quick to whiten the eye. And now I'm using that colorless blender to push that blob through the paper. Now notice it pretty much has disappeared, but I can do that one more time. B12 is going to base some of those stripes on her dress, and B14 is going to add some shading or a little jumper. I couldn't tell if there's a split, like those are two little legs. But B12 is smoothing it out, and I added, notice, blue toes for her toenails. They're painted blue for fun. V01 is the opposite stripes and her little shoes. Her flip-flops are looking good. V04 is going to add the shading on those areas. Fun, bright summer colors. Of course, we're heading into fall as I'm filming this and doing this, but I think I'm holding on to summer. V01 to smooth those areas out. Remember, keeping my light source over to that left-hand side the whole time. V06 is what I base the towel with, and you're going to see a classic Michelle mistake here because I've gotten going so fast. Because the next color I pull out after the V06 is a V05, and I think I'm going to do some shadowing with that, and I realize what I picked up. So, back to V06, and I'm going to go over those areas that I want dark a second time. Remember, this works really well with Copic markers. I can add layers of ink and that's going to darken those areas. So I can see those folds now really well. N5 is back out, and this time it's coloring in the inner tube. Getting that all filled in. Nice strong base. N7 is next, adding some roundness to that inner tube, that tire. N9 is going to add the deepest shadows. And I kind of go back and forth about how I want this to look and what's actually going to catch the light. I'm not totally pleased with how this part ends up, but I figure because that's kind of behind her, that back side is actually not going to catch the light. And I've gone back and blended, but now I'm actually going to even push further back with my colorless blender to lighten up that front edge and top of that tire. I actually think it looks a little more like rubber anyway, so I'm pleased with the results of how that turned out in the end. She has this basket that she's carrying as well, so I start that with Y35 and then add Y38 to add a little bit more to the texture and the look of that. Y24 is going to go back in, and I'm really just going over the lines of that basket to try to give it some texture. Minimal success there. E13, I am back on her face because I really wanted it to have more depth. And again, this part isn't exactly how I want it, but it's going to work. E11 to smooth it out, and I'm just going to rework this again and again. So this is one of those times where I think I overworked it a little bit, but I'm going to go back and forth between that E13 because now I realize that the rest of her skin isn't as dark, and the E11 again to smooth out, and I'm going to keep fighting that just a little bit. E11 one more time because I realize now I have a funny little patch of light on her face. So I have a few more places that I'm probably going to fiddle with a little bit. I'm not totally, the skin is not as even as I would like it to be. I'm going to do a little more correcting on my blob that I hit on her hair. And I can do that a couple times and probably get most of that to disappear so that I'm not having to truly fussy cut all the way into that hairline when I add her to a card. I think because I know where we are at time-wise that I am going to do a card and put that on my blog. There is just no way that I am going to get a card in here as well. It's already pushing the time limits, especially, and she's going to be fast forwarded to the nth degree. So I hope you had fun watching. I hope that you are doing some coloring of your own as our summers finish up and enjoying your Copic markers. Have a happy, colorful week.